Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Ali. I'm a doctor working in Cambridge in the UK, and I have just finished my last day of work for quite a while. So this is going to be a long, rambly, very chatty video, generally giving my thoughts and reflections on the last 2 years of being a junior doctor in the UK's National Health Service. It's going to be quite long, but I'll try and split it up into different sections, which will be in timestamps over here and in the video description and in a pinned comment, and hopefully the new YouTube chapters feature will work. So do feel free to skip around the video if you like. But yeah, people sent in questions via Instagram, and I'm just gonna generally be fairly openly sharing my thoughts on what it's like and how things are at the moment. So let's start with what I'm feeling right now. And I'm not usually one to talk about my feelings, so a skill to improve on, like everything else. But I'm feeling a little bit sad because I've been at this hospital in this small town for the last 12 months. I was at quite a big hospital in Cambridge for 12 months before that. And I've just come back from work having said goodbye to all the other doctors and nurses and the consultants and stuff on the ward. And it just feels a little bit bittersweet because I'd been kind of looking forward to this moment for a long time and thinking, oh, just 1 month to go, just 2 weeks to go, that final moment of freedom. But I think it's kind of like with exams, right? Like, at least when I've always taken exams in the past, I've always hyped up what it would finally be like to be done with exams. Like, oh, once that last exam gets out of the way, then I'll be free for the summer. And then you kind of get there and it's a bit anticlimactic. You're like, oh, well, I guess this is it. Now it's time for the summer holidays. So it sort of feels like that. Like, it feels good in a way, like now being fully unencumbered and not having to go to work each morning. But at the same time, yeah, like for the last 2 years, so kind of going the ritual of going to work each day pretty much and kind of building the rest of my life around the day job has basically been just kind of what I do. And it's something I don't have to think too hard about. And now the thought of tomorrow morning waking up and not having a job to go to just feels kind of weird. Like, I'm really worried that I'm going to wake up tomorrow or at some point and think I don't really have a good reason to get out of bed right now, just because work is such a huge chunk of our lives. And so that's the part of leaving the job that, just feels kind of weird. So it'll be interesting to see in a few weeks' time. Like, I'm kind of trying to make plans already for all the ways I'm going to fill up my time, all the different skills I want to learn, and all the different videos and courses and all this stuff that I want to make and all of that stuff. Yeah, I think from tomorrow I'm going to have this sort of hole that previously work filled with like something to do, something that was kind of fun, something that gave me social interaction with people, that helped me use my brain some of the time. And I'm going to have to replace that with a few different things. I don't really have any single thing that will completely fill that hole, which I think is fair enough. Let's now talk about, a few people asked why I'm leaving medicine. So I don't know what the title of this video is going to be, but maybe we'll do something suitably clickbait. But essentially, so after these 2 years of being a junior doctor, of doing my foundation years in medicine, I've decided to take a break for at least a year. A lot of people do this. It's quite common. You take a year out. Usually people do something medical with that time. Like, they'll go to Australia for a bit to do some work there, or they'll do some research, or they'll go to London and do a kind of 1 year job, like a temporary thing. Or some people just like travel the world and stuff. And so my plan before this whole coronavirus thing happened was that I was going to travel the world. But now that the whole coronavirus thing is here, I'm not sure that's really going to be possible anymore. And so I'll need to find something to do with my time. At the moment, lots of Europe is open. I can go up and down the UK to visit friends. I think that'll tide me over for a little bit of time, but it feels kind of weird not having a specific medical kind of goal to be working towards. In terms of specialty, I made a video a few weeks ago talking about how I'm considering a move to America. That is the sort of thing that would take at least 2 or 3 years to actually sort out, just because it's such a long, drawn-out application process. You have to jump through 100 different hoops, and I still haven't fully decided if that's the direction I want to go. So, at least in the short term, for the next few months / for the next year, I'm going to be preparing for the USMLE, the US medical exam. I still think I'm going to do that. I think that'll give me at least something to do each day. And then beyond that, I'm thinking that it would be cool to go to Australia for a bit to get some emergency medicine experience. And so I'm in the process of applying to jobs, and I've got a call with an agency tomorrow. If anyone is in Australia right now and you're listening to this and you want to give me a job at your hospital, let me know. Because I think working in Australia and getting some experience in emergency department there would be kind of fun. It would be interesting, it would be cool. So that's kind of what I'm doing. In terms of why I'm doing this, I've been thinking long and hard about this, and some of it I mentioned in my Why I'm Moving to America video, but essentially when you're in medicine, at least in the UK, we go straight into medical school usually from high school. And so I applied to medicine when I was 16, 17. I got in at 18, and from 18 to 24, age 18 to 24, I was a full-time medical student at Cambridge. And now from 24 to 26, I've been working full-time as a doctor. So it's a very sort of, you come in and then sort of almost before you know it, you're sort of on this conveyor belt that just kind of keeps moving forward. And having spoken to a lot of senior doctors and consultants and stuff over the last couple of years, and also while I was in med school, there's sort of two schools of thought. There's one school of thought, which is you want to get all of your training out of the way as soon as possible. You want to become a consultant. You want to become a fully qualified specialist as soon as possible. You know, the earliest you can get that in the UK is about age 33, 34. Once you're there, then you can start to enjoy life, i.e., you know, generally people say that the training is quite difficult. You have long hours. You don't really have much control over your rota. But once you're a consultant, at that point, you have a lot more clout. You know what you're doing. You're actually being useful. And you can do things like drop your hours down or work part-time, or, you know, do only the sorts of operations that you want to do. You know, it just generally gives you a bit more freedom. That's kind of one school of thought. The other school of thought, which is the camp that I'm in, is that there's no rush to be a consultant. Whether you're a consultant at 33 or 34 or 35, 36, or even 46, like no one actually cares once you're there how long it took you to get there. And so it becomes a case of thinking that this whole medicine thing is not a race, it's a marathon. This is a career that we're going to be doing for the rest of our lives. What does it matter if I take a year out here and there to explore other interests, like making videos on the internet or traveling the world or doing whatever you want to do? Because my view of this is, by the time I'm fully qualified as a consultant in whatever specialty I want to be in, you know, hopefully by that time I'll, you know, maybe be married, maybe have some kids, because I anticipate that'll be in my sort of late 30s, if not early 40s. That would be kind of nice. And at that point, once you're married, you've got a house, you've got some kids, it's a lot harder to just randomly travel the world because you feel like it, or just randomly stop working because you feel like it. And like, I get the view that you want to finish your training as soon as possible, but I think, especially given the position I'm in, I don't think that's necessarily the way forward. And I think it's much kind of better for me, at least this is my current view, to kind of take my time with it, because it's really not a race. Like, I'm not in any rush to be a consultant. I'm not in any rush to be fully qualified as a doctor. I kind of more want to take it a bit easier. I quite like the idea of doing less than full-time training, which is a thing that a lot of UK hospitals and UK specialties are now trying to promote, just to combat the general burnout and attrition within medicine. Specialties like emergency medicine, like obstetrics and gynecology, are quite famous for having high burnout rates where the rotas are so tough and people will drop out midway through a training program because they, you know, their priorities changed or whatever. So these specialties are kind of leading the way, and I think pediatrics as well, in terms of allowing people to work less than full time. So maybe 80% rather than 100%. And if you work 80%, then it takes you 20% longer to finish your training, but you also have a day off every week, which is kind of nice. And a lot of people that I've spoken to who are less than full-time trainees say that it's great because they can spend that time at home with their kids or doing the thing that they love. And yeah, it takes them a little bit longer to become a fully qualified consultant, but you know, who cares? Like, you know, when you're a consultant, no one is going to be like, oh, well, you took 10 years to become a consultant. You only took 5 years. You're better. And the thing that I think about is that when I'm on my deathbed, I'm very, very unlikely to be thinking, damn, you know, I wish I'd been a consultant for 3 more years. You know, I regret traveling the world for that time. I regret exploring my other interests. And I really wish I'd just kind of gone into the world of work and put my head down and done the work. I don't think that is what I'd be thinking when I'm on my deathbed. And so those are the two kind of camps: the complete your training as soon as possible camp, and then the take your time completing your training because actually no one cares. Obviously there's a spectrum, and I'm very much towards the take your time completing training, enjoy life in the process. No one really cares. It's not a race. It's not a competition with other people. It's all good. So that is why I've decided to take this time out. The position that I'm in right now, after 2 years of doing medicine in the UK, there's kind of a natural break whereby you then have to actively apply for a specialty and decide what you want to do. So firstly, I don't really know what I want to do yet, which is fine, people say. I'm strongly leaning towards emergency medicine, but having said that, I've never worked in emergency medicine before. All I know about it is what I've seen from being in the hospital generally, and what I've seen from, spoken to friends and colleagues who work in emergency medicine. And so one of my priorities for this year and moving forward is to try and get some experience in that, hence the idea of moving to Australia. But I don't really know. I don't really know what I want to do. And my mum kind of talks to me about this some of the time. She says, you know, do you realize that you don't really have a direction in life? And I'm like, yeah, tell me about it. I don't have a direction in life. I don't know what I'm doing. But hey, it's fine. You know, just my view at the moment is that it's better for me to just generally try and keep my options open, to just pursue the things that seem interesting in the moment, but that also have some kind of long-term benefit. So right now I'm thinking that this YouTube thing, by the grace of God, is going pretty well. While I'm here, I might as well take some time out to try and pour fuel on the fire, to try and diversify the streams of revenue, to try and get most of my eggs out of the YouTube basket, to focus on my blog, to make some more courses, to do these other things that will hopefully A, be fun and enjoyable, because it is fun and just kind of cool. B, I can kind of travel the world while doing it, which is just kind of nice. And C, hopefully that'll be assets that compound over time that will set me up better for the future, rather than going straight into a training program without necessarily knowing what I want to do with my life. So that's kind of where we are right now. I just want to talk a little bit about what it's been like these last 2 years working as a doctor, and I'm going to answer some questions from Instagram along the way. Reflections on your time studying and working in medicine. So we had lots of questions asking, what are the good and the bad parts about being a doctor? The good parts are that it's just generally quite fun, especially when there is stuff going on. I've had lots of days in my current placement, obstetrics and gynecology, where I've had my patient list that is, and there is just enough stuff going on that I don't kind of get bored, that there's always something to do, but there's not so much that it feels kind of frazzling to try and sort of handle everything and juggle everything. And actually for me, I think I'm the sort of person that I kind of quite like it when there are days where we've just got 10 people that turn up at once, and then at that point it becomes a case of, okay, let's really prioritize, let's focus on triaging them and figuring out who needs scans first and figuring out what order I should do my stuff in to sort of minimize the amount of waiting time and all this. It's quite fun. So that's one of the nice aspects of it. Like when it's busy, I quite enjoy it. Another nice aspect is the teamwork. That's probably my favorite component. It's just really fun hanging out on the wards with other junior doctor colleagues and nurses, and making friends with some of the senior doctors and kind of going for a coffee here and there and chatting over lunch to the other colleagues. And it's just a generally very nice, happy, chill, teamworky kind of vibe. On obstetrics, we've got the midwives who, chat to here and there. On gynecology, we've got lots of the nurses who, again, we chat to here and there when there's time. So the teamworking aspect is a really nice part of it. I also like the talking to patients side of things. One of the main reasons I did medicine is because I didn't want to be in a job that sat me behind a computer screen at all times. And there is a lot of sitting behind a computer screen as a junior doctor, because there's a lot of typing up you have to do and stuff like that. But then there is the aspect of actually talking to patients, and it's just kind of cool. Especially on, being on obstetrics and gynecology for the last 8 months. The patients who are coming in with things like, early pregnancy, bleeding, and potentially having a miscarriage, potentially having an ectopic pregnancy, which is like a big deal. A lot of gynecological conditions as well, like pelvic infections or vulval cysts and abscesses and things like that. These are really difficult problems for patients to be dealing with, obviously. And it's a real privilege and joy in a way to be the person who's kind of helping them through that difficult time. And obviously kind of there's this whole, it's not an individual that is making any of the difference, it's the whole system, it's the whole team. But being part of that team feels quite nice. And especially on days where I feel like I have gone above and beyond as a sort of junior doctor, as a foundation year doctor. It's not like a heroic going above and beyond. It's not like someone is bleeding to death in front of me and I've resuscitated them by myself. It's not really like that. It's more like, we're approaching 5 p.m. The scanning department is already closed, but I know that there's 2 people in there who are still kind of wrapping up, and I have good relationships with them. And I know this lady is going to feel a lot better if we can get a scan to reassure her about whether her baby's all right or not. And therefore I will run to the scan department and be like, look, please, this lady, she really needs a scan. I know it's out of hours, but please, can you do it? And then they'll be like, oh, all right then. And then that is the sort of stuff that makes me feel good, because I feel like in that circumstance, I as an individual could actually make a difference, but like not in a way that I would have expected. I would have expected, swoop in and like Derek Shepherd, Grey's Anatomy, whatever, save the day. But it's more about figuring out how the system works and then kind of twiddling the rules of the system such that you can occasionally bend rules for patients if you have that chance. So that's the kind of stuff that I feel a sense of fulfillment when I've had a day where I can do something like that. Or for example, if I've had a day where lots of women have come in with like early pregnancy bleeding or whatever, and I've got enough experience that I kind of know what's going on, and I've kind of seen them, examined them, made a plan, arranged their scan, looked at the scan, and sort of put a good picture together, which I can then present to the registrar or the consultant, the senior doctors, and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is the deal with the patient. These are the blood results. This is the scan. This is what I think is going on, and this is what I think we should do. In the early days, I was always very hesitant about suggesting some kind of plan, because I didn't really know what I was doing. But now, especially having done it for the last 8 months, I'm now relatively comfortable with suggesting plans. And most of the time, the senior doctor is like, yeah, sounds good, go for it. And they appreciate the fact that I've suggested a plan and it's a reasonable plan. Occasionally, like happened last week and actually earlier today as well, I made a plan, which is I think we should bring this lady back for a serum HCG level next week. And the senior doctor was like, I don't think that's a good idea. I think instead we should not do that, because the serum HCG is not going to tell us anything. I think we should bring her back for a scan in 2 weeks' time. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Why is that? And then they say, okay, because of this, this, and this. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Thank you for letting me know. And so I get a lot of fulfillment out of kind of packaging it up, figuring out and proposing a plan. But I also have to take basically none of the risk on myself, because it's always the senior doctor who is kind of approving most of the decisions that I make. It's nice when you get into that flow state almost. And this is what everyone says about what brings fulfillment in anything that we do. And part of the reason why I love making YouTube videos and editing and kind of doing website stuff is it really gets me into this flow state where it's just me and the task at hand, and I kind of lose track of the time. And so sometimes when I'm getting into the flow state with conditions that I'm familiar enough with, that I know what's going on, that feels kind of nice. So those are sort of the good aspect of medicine. People asking about what are the bad things. So, I mean, there's the bad things that are associated with having any kind of full-time job, which is that you become a slave to your rota almost. And if I want to take time off, I have to negotiate it with the rota coordinator. I have to figure out no one else is off sick that day or no one else has got annual leave, because obviously we always have to have a certain number of doctors on at any given time. And so in a way, it becomes our responsibility to manage the rota and figure out, okay, on the 21st of August, there are 3 people on the wards and we only need 2, so I can take annual leave that day and stuff like that. And especially with the whole coronavirus thing, when we switched to an emergency rota, that became quite tricky because suddenly we needed 3 doctors on any given day, and there are only 4 of us in the whole, essentially on the placement in terms of the senior house officers. And so we all had a real issue with getting annual leave and kind of getting time off when we wanted it. So that's just kind of a general aspect of having any kind of full-time job. The other things that I don't like about it, I mean, there's a lot more admin and logistical paperwork than I would have guessed. A lot of the time, I'd say maybe kind of 10% of my time is spent actually seeing a patient, and 90% of the time is spent typing notes up on the computer, arranging a scan, labeling the bloods, handwriting some blood labels because they have to be handwritten, sending that down to the lab, trying to find my senior doctors who are in theater because they're busy with an emergency and being like, okay, you know, I've got this list of 8 things to ask them, what order should I do it in? A huge chunk of it is logistical rather than patient sort of sitting in front of a patient and patient focused. And obviously all those logistics are really important because it's the system that cures the patient, it's not the individual. But still, it's a somewhat frustrating part of it where I'm like, yeah, I've just taken some blood and this is fun. And I'm like, oh, well, now I have to spend 10 minutes printing the blood labels and, oh, the printer's not working. Okay, cool. Got to go around, find another printer, or, oh, they're not registered on the system yet. Therefore, I have to go to another computer and log in. And it's those inefficiencies within the system that are one of the annoying things about it. But hey, it's just something that you got to do. The other bad thing that somewhat bad thing is like when I make a mistake, and I know that I've made a mistake. This has happened a few times, like in the last few months, and you know, on each of my placements, I've made certain kind of classes of mistake. Thankfully, very few times sort of actual harm. It's like something really bad has happened to a patient. On obstetrics and gynecology, it's one of those things where often a lady will come in with early pregnancy bleeding and a little bit of pain. One of the things that could be is an ectopic pregnancy. And an ectopic pregnancy is a pregnancy that's not growing in the womb, it's growing in one of the fallopian tubes, or usually. The problem with an ectopic pregnancy is that if it grows to a certain size, it can burst, and then the lady bleeds into her abdomen and pelvis, and that can be life-threatening. But the problem is that most of these ladies are young, fit, and healthy, and so if they do have an ectopic pregnancy and they are bleeding into the pelvis, you might not know it from just looking at them because all of their vitals are stable, their heart rate is fine, their blood pressure is fine, they don't look particularly unwell because they're young and fit and healthy, so they can compensate for that problem because their body does a good job of compensating for it. And they will sort of drop off the cliff very quickly. And so especially seeing someone at nighttime where we don't have a scan available until the next morning and they look completely fine and their observations, their vital signs are completely fine and their blood tests are completely fine, they could still have an ectopic pregnancy. And so it's always scary sending these people home for the scan the following day because most of the time the scan shows it's either an ectopic pregnancy or most likely it isn't. But very occasionally they will rupture that ectopic pregnancy overnight and they'll be rushed into theater in the morning via ambulance. Then you find out in the morning, oh, we've got an ectopic pregnancy in theater. It was a ruptured ectopic. And at least for me, I have that sinking feeling. I was like, oh God, is this a lady that I saw yesterday? Is this a lady that I sent home because I thought it was fine? Is there anything I could have done differently to prevent, this life-threatening emergency? The risk-taking aspect of it is, I wouldn't say it's a bad part, but it's obviously not a nice feeling when you have that kind of sinking in the stomach. You're like, oh crap, is this someone that I sent home that I shouldn't have sent home? Is there anything I could have done differently? And you find your mind whirring through the possibilities and thinking, no, like even knowing that it's a ruptured ectopic, the picture that I got last night would not have made me act any differently, which is fine. Or it's a case of discussing it with the senior and thinking, okay, is there another sign I should be on the lookout for? So the nice thing, again, about medicine is that it's a very kind of learning experience. And especially when you're a young and a junior doctor and stuff, and even as you get older and progress through the training, there isn't really a culture of the blame game that, oh, it's your fault that something bad happened to the patient. It's more like thinking, okay, why did that happen? What can we learn from it? And what can we do to avoid doing it next time? People asked expectations versus reality. Honestly, I think the main expectation versus reality issue was the fact of just there being just a large amount of logistical admin having to deal with, and that's the stuff that medical school does absolutely not prepare you for. The other thing as well is that I kind of thought it would be more a case of having to think and having to do like Dr. House and diagnosing people magically and stuff. This is the idea that I had before going into med school. But actually so much of it is based on guidelines and sound principles. And by the time you've seen early pregnancy bleeding a few times, for 95% of the cases, they fall neatly into one of the guidelines. And so you don't really have to think when managing them. It's only in the 5% of edge cases that you need to think a little bit harder or ask a senior and be like, hey, this is a bit weird. This is not what we're expecting. But the whole research and stuff within medicine has gotten to a point where, like, me and a lot of my colleagues feel that we're not really doing a lot of thinking on the job. We're just plugging numbers into a guideline, plugging numbers into a scoring system, and then it's telling us what to do, which is exactly how evidence-based medicine should be. Like, it should not, like, a well-designed system should absolutely not be based on the competence of individuals. It should be based on the kind of tightness of the system as a whole. But that's just an aspect of it that I didn't really appreciate before I started doing it. Got a question here about regrets. What are your regrets in the last 2 years? Regret, I don't think I have any real regrets. There have been a few cases where I've done something which I shouldn't have done for not knowing any better, or because I was blindsided by a detail, or various reasons where harm in certain ways, harm came to a patient. Like, obviously I'd rather those things wouldn't have happened, but also they were part of the learning experience. And essentially it's impossible for all the patients to be seen by the most senior consultant every time, right? And the system is designed for training, like it's a training system. Inevitably, when you have any kind of training system, you are gonna get mistakes happening, because that's just what happens when you're training people and when juniors are seeing patients. And it's a necessary part of building a healthcare system, because you need some way of training up the juniors. But it does inevitably mean that some people are going to get shortchanged. That's something that's hard to come to terms with. I think in Paul Calanthini, whatever his name is, his book, When Breath Becomes Air, he talks about this idea of kind of whether the operation is being done by a junior or being done by a senior. Because we all kind of know that sometimes less experienced people have to do the operation, because if they don't, then they'll never get the experience needed to actually become competent. But we also know that if a less experienced person is doing the operation, there is a slightly increased risk that harm is going to come to the patient, because it's a less experienced person doing it. And we can mitigate against that by supervision and sort of making sure a senior is with them at all times and stuff. But inevitably, when you have less experienced people doing stuff, you're gonna get mistakes happening. And that's tricky, right? Because let's say, I'm a doctor in the system, I understand what's going on. If my mum needed surgery, I would appreciate that the registrar, that the junior doctor needs training in the operation. But I would still want that operation to be done by a consultant, because this is my mum we're talking about. But that only works on the individual level. Like, that is not the sort of thing that is really feasible with the entire system, because it's not feasible for every single operation to be done by the most experienced consultant. So that's a tricky part of it. And so, like, when it comes to regrets, yeah, I've made a few mistakes that I wish I hadn't made, but I know that making those mistakes is part of the learning process. I know that mistakes across the system are inevitable, and and so it's hard for me to say that it's a regret as such, just because that is kind of how the system works. We learn from making mistakes. And unfortunately, in the field of healthcare, sometimes when people make mistakes, harm is going to come to a patient in one way or another. And I don't really think there's any real way of avoiding that, other than doing what we can to mitigate against the risks. Most rewarding moments, we have a question. What are the most rewarding moments? I think it's those times when a patient says thank you, and I feel like I've had some kind of personal input into their care in a way that I haven't with other patients. Because again, this comes back to how it's the system that saves the patient rather than the individual. Like, most of the time, the patients who are on my ward and are leaving and saying, thank you everyone, it's been a pleasure, take care, blah, blah, blah. I don't really feel anything specific for those patients, because I don't know them that well. I maybe saw them once or twice. I probably wasn't the person who saw them when they first came in. I probably wasn't the person who assisted during their operation, just because it's, the other people in the system that are doing those bits. And so when they say goodbye, thank you, you've really helped me, or give a thank you card and stuff, it doesn't feel that personally rewarding. But when it comes to patients who, for example, if I was the first one to see them when they came into the emergency department, and I was the one who said that they should be admitted into hospital and, arranged the logistics of their operation, and then potentially even assisted in their operation, and then they go to a recovery, then that feels a lot nicer, because it feels like, I feel like I know the patient, I know this lady, I know what the story is, and I feel like, this is a good day's work. So that's probably kind of the rewarding aspect of it. It's also like annoyingly rewarding to get praise from seniors. And I never thought I'd be that guy, but a few weeks ago, I got a compliment from one of the consultants, and then a couple of weeks ago, I got a compliment from one of the registrars, one of the other seniors. And it just feels really nice when like a senior doctor or one of the nurses like acknowledge that you're good at your job and that you did something right and that you did something well. It'd be like, you know, even on our medic bleep, essentially kind of secure WhatsApp type system, occasionally I'll kind of write a long thing and suggest a plan, and the response will be, oh, that's a great idea, thanks. Feel free to send me a sort of feedback request or something. And that's the doctor saying that, oh, wow, you've done a good job. I'm happy to write up something for your portfolio. It's just kind of comments like that just feel like disproportionately good. It's kind of annoying, right? Because I certainly don't want my own self-esteem and my own self-worth to be tied to what other people think of me, because that's not a good way to live life. And yet, when a senior compliments you, there's just something nice about it. So that's another kind of really rewarding part of it that I wouldn't have expected. And that kind of makes me think that, like, when I'm a senior doctor, I want to be the sort of person who compliments people on doing a good job, because I know how much of a difference it can make. And like, you know, there were a few doctors on my team who are sort of less like you like present a case to them and they would give you the answer, and you might have done the right things, but they wouldn't even give you a well done, that's the right answer. They would just be like, cool, yeah, go for it. And it just feels less nice working for those people, even though they're just as good and, you know, they help you learn and stuff. But just a little compliment goes a long way. And that's something that I will definitely keep in mind. And I remember when I was a medical student as well, like anytime a doctor were to go out of their way to help me learn something, I'd feel like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And it takes so little effort for like a doctor like me to take an interest in the medical students and be like, hey, what's going on? Do you want to help with this? It's so little effort on my part, but it makes such a big difference to their day. And so it's the sort of thing that I really want to keep up as I go through training and become more senior. And I don't want to forget what it feels like to be complimented, if that makes sense. We've got a few questions as well, and kind of what you've learned since starting the channel and your side businesses. And I'm going to sort of try and relate that to medicine in a way, but this is stuff that I've talked about at length before. You know, this idea that I think, like, for me personally, I don't want to live a life where my full-time job, the thing that I do for a living, is kind of making a living. Like, I don't want my job to be the thing that I need to actively do to make money. I want to have the option to do what I want. And obviously money is a part of that, because we all need some amount of money to live. And for most of us, that amount of money is directly coupled to the thing that we spend our time doing. And I've long thought that I don't want that to be the case for me. I want to have a job like I want to stay in medicine because medicine's fun, but I don't want to have to stay in medicine because I need to pay the bills. And so over the last couple of years, as the YouTube channel's really taken off, thank you everyone who watches these videos, especially if you're watching this far. As the YouTube channel's taken off, as I started making more courses and classes on Skillshare and affiliate products and these different streams of income, I feel I've gotten to a point where I really don't need to rely on medicine to make money. And that feels like a really good position, because it means that now when I'm doing medicine, I'm doing it for fun rather than because I have to. And again, you know, this isn't like a dichotomy thing. It's obviously like a spectrum. There are some people who absolutely love it and do it for fun, and it also happens to make money, which is absolutely fantastic. But for me, like, I think if given the choice, the way that I've spent the last 2 years is not how I would choose to spend the rest of my life. Like, I would not actively choose that on average 5 days a week and for 48 hours a week, I'm gonna drive an hour to work, drive an hour back, and spend time in a hospital. I don't think that's the way, like, if I could design my lifestyle and my life from scratch, that's not what I would actively choose to do with it. I think what I would choose is that 2 or 3 days a week, I'd wanna do medicine because it's fun, but I wouldn't wanna do it much more than that. At least that's what I'm currently thinking. You know, obviously this is subject to change. We all change our mind at various different times. I've changed my mind on what sort of specialty I want to do 100 different times. It's fine. We don't need to have all the answers. And we've got a question, kind of, what are your worries, concerns about the next year/future? Yeah, all right, let's shed my worries to the camera. So what am I worried about? Worry is a strong word, right? Because I tend not to worry about things in general, but I have some level of concern about the following. So firstly, as I mentioned, I'm kind of worried that I'll wake up in the mornings and not really know what to do with myself. I'm kind of worried that when I do decide to go into a specialty, I actually won't like it and I'd want to leave the specialty. And I'm worried about, if that happens in the future, to what extent that is just a function of the specialty. Maybe it just didn't gel with me, the specific specialty. But I think more likely, if it comes to that position, it's more a case of I'm not doing enough to enjoy this thing. Because I think that a lot of the time, we are the ones who can choose to enjoy the things that we're doing. Like, I could study for my exams absolutely hating every minute of it, or I could choose to study for my exams enjoying the subject and enjoying learning new stuff. And it's just that mindset shift that really makes a big difference between hating your life and loving your life. And I'm worried that if I end up not enjoying medicine, it won't be because of the medicine itself, it'll be because I am choosing not to enjoy it. And I'm kind of worried that because I've got the option to not do it, that I will choose to exercise that option and that I'll end up quitting medicine completely. I can't see it happening, but in the back of my mind, it's that question of, well, I kind of decided I wanted to be a doctor when I was 16. What did I know about it? Absolutely nothing. Is this really the right thing for me? If I had my time again, would I do medicine? Absolutely, in a heartbeat. But I think that is building towards this idea of working part-time as a doctor rather than working full-time as a doctor. So that's another thing that I worry about. The other thing I worry about is that, well, people are only following me on YouTube because I'm a doctor and I went to Cambridge and stuff. And what value are my productivity tips or study tips if I'm not walking the talk, I think is the phrase. And so I'm also kind of worried that if I choose to make the decision to not do medicine at all because I found something else to do, then to what extent am I hamstringing my other streams of income? Because in a way, I feel like I have the security blanket of multiple streams of income via this YouTube channel and other things to not have to do medicine. But if I wasn't a doctor, would my YouTube channel be as successful? Probably not. If I didn't have the Cambridge thing behind me, would it have got momentum initially? Possibly not. If I'm not a doctor working full time and I'm making videos about productivity, do they have as much value? Possibly not. It's all these kind of things. And so what I worry about is that if I do decide to leave medicine, suddenly everything else unravels as well, because all of it was somehow tied to this fact that I'm a doctor, and that was the thing that ties everything together. And again, I can't see myself leaving. I can see myself going very part-time, but that's another thing I worry about. The other thing I worry about now is, even now, kind of with the size of this YouTube channel and the streams of income, it still feels like a house of cards that could come crumbling down at any moment. And I still kind of feel a sense of every time we put out a video and it does badly on the analytics, I think, it's the beginning of the end now. People have realized that I'm a fraud and my YouTube channel's not worth anything and it's going to unravel. And it's it's a nice problem to have, but it's still, it's sort of an existential sort of thing of, is this business really going to survive? And kind of from reading stuff that people have written online about what it's like to run a startup, to have your own business, the stresses of running your own business are the existential stresses. They're the worries of, okay, is our business going to be alive 2 years from now? The stresses of having a normal job is like, what does my boss think of me, and am I going to get that promotion? So it's a different sort of stress, kind of doing this sort of entrepreneur, self-employed business lifestyle type thing that I'm dabbling with. That's kind of what it feels like on the inside. And so every time we do get a video that doesn't perform well, maybe this is going to be one of those, but it's just like a case of having to do a lot of mental shenanigans to think, no, Ali, my self-worth is not tied to the analytics, and just because a video didn't perform very well, it doesn't mean it didn't resonate with people. And 50,000 people watched that video. That's still quite a lot of people. Maybe it's not 500,000, but 50,000 is still a hell of a lot of people. And they've written comments saying that this video helped them. And all of these mental shenanigans that I have to do to not feel bad about the fact that videos are performing less well. So those are the sort of worries that go through my mind about this year and the future. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to end by thanking everyone who has followed the journey over the last 3 years. I think it was June 2017 that I first started this YouTube channel. And obviously when I started it, I had absolutely no idea what level it would get to. And every day when I kind of look at the stats and see the comments from people and get the DMs on Instagram and stuff, I almost can't believe that it's real. And I think that's partly where the fear comes from, that all of this could come crumbling down at any moment. But I want to extend a huge, heartfelt, for whatever that's worth, thank you to everyone who's watching this, especially if you've watched this far, watched my ramble. Those were just some general reflections, and thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, as they say, although apparently these days, the YouTube algorithm doesn't even take likes into account. But hey, smash that like button anyway. Do please leave a comment down below. I'd love to have a chat with people to see what you think about the journey. Where are you on your journey? What is it like? What kind of decisions, kind of crossroads are you at? I'd be curious to hear your guys' views on the topic. So thank you very much for watching. I'm gonna get a drink of water because I can't speak anymore. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.